Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed and we are in the Philosophical Midwifery book today. We are finishing off the second case study, subject B and his scene with his papa and the lawnmower. And last we left we came to two fundamental insights about the nature of philosophical midwifery and the nature of being a human being and having human problems. The first one is there are certain things that we can know to be false, but we believe to be true. Our whole lives dictating the course of our entire lived experience, our relationships, our choice of goals, how well we can approach the goals we want to do. We also saw, second, that there are some things that, which one did I start with? The first one, there are things that are false, we know to be false, but we believe to be true. Equally so, there are things that are true, we know to be true, but we believe are false. So we saw with this that there are, it's true that he is able to work on small things. He is able to do what he loves to do exquisitely, beautifully, but he doesn't believe it to be so. Okay, isn't that interesting? There's a certain class of belief that completely controls the course of our lives, making us a kind of zombie or an NPC character chained to fate that binds us to a certain path, even if we know it's false. Isn't that interesting? And the third thing we saw last time is this within this dynamic of believing what's false involves an idea of love, a sick idea of love, an idea of love that's based around being diminished, based around lies, based around sabotaging our own meaningful goals. That is a sick idea of love. It's also part of the human condition. We are an interesting lot, aren't we, us human beings? Bound to what's false, even if we know it's false. And bound to a sick idea of love that no one would choose to have if they understood it. So, that's where we were at in that second case study. So we're learning a lot about ourselves, the nature of human problems, why we are as a species in the situations we are in, why we are ourselves stuck in the cycles of problems we're in our individual lives, and maybe also gaining insight into why our relationships aren't as ideal as they could be. We're also learning about the philosophical midwifery process itself and what it means to be a midwife. How do we really benefit people? It's not debate. Not at all. It's not blame. Not punishment. Not at all. It's helping people discover where they fall down, where they make a mistake, where they miss the mark. Encouraging that. In fact, you can't be in the game unless you found yourself making mistakes. So encouraging people to seek their most meaningful goals. For this particular person, subject B, it was writing. And encouraging our friends to go as far as they can until they start missing the mark. Until they start sabotaging themselves. So to be a good person is to encourage mistakes. never ever as an excuse to inflict violence or pain. That's sadistic. The word we have for that is punishment. No punishment, not ever. But as a doorway into self-reflection, guided self-reflection, that's what we contribute as a midwife. How to specifically guide a person's self-reflection about the problems they're having so they can do what they are literally here to do. Why were we born? Well, if every human being gets this thing called a pathologos that completely controls our lives, irregardless of whether or not we know it to be true or false, then we can conclude our job here is to remove it and also discover what's involved in that process of removing it. We go through it as an experience and also learn the art, because for ourselves to fully remove our pathologos problems, we have to learn the art too. Because as we were reading in the book, we don't just understand the cause and nature of our problems, we have to understand the cause and nature of pathologos themselves. Which is neat. We get two. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win. So we reflect on our own problems, but also we reflect on problems themselves. We go through midwifery as a subject, but also we learn about being a midwife ourselves. When we do dream analysis, we apply the same dialectic we're learning to uncovering the meaning of our dreams, get the specific meaning, the message that we're being sent from our guru, our dream master, but also we reflect on dreams themselves. It's win-win-win all the way for us.
Win-win-win-win-win.
Win-win-win-win-win. We're always winning in this game. So that's where we were in subject B, but we took a bit of a pause to chat with chat for a while, and we were discussing the Hypotheses of Parmenides. Bring that up on the board. And how this same dialectic that we are learning in dream analysis, that we are learning in midwifery, that is the structure of the questions that we ask somebody through the dialectic to solve the problems that people have. The opposite of debate. Why? Because debate is about opinions. Dialectic is about understanding. And as we just saw, the beliefs and opinions we carry are false, are harmful. They are what block us. They carry the sick idea of love. The good idea of love always has to be married to understanding. So, why defend beliefs if belief is the cause of human problems? And as we saw at the end of chapter 4, this movement of belief into understanding is not only the most important thing we can do in midwifery, it's also the stage of evolution that we're at. And we took a break to have a look at the dialectic applied to Parmenides' hypotheses. Socrates' first philosophical teacher was a dude named Parmenides. He was a radical dude. And he said to Socrates, hey, you'll never find the nature of truth, or you never find truth unless you master the dialectic. And Socrates says, hey, that dialectic sounds tricky. Can you give me a demonstration of it on self? Parmenides said, okay, I'll give a dialectic on the self. And he gives the first hypothesis. This is what the self is. But then he said, by the way, I am going to give all possible expressions of the self. So this one self expresses or reflects itself to all of the dimensions of reality, giving us an understandable pattern or structure for existence. But it's also the model or structure for our evolution, for our learning, because these 8 4 if it is, 4 is it if it isn't, matching the dialectic. These 8 hypotheses of Parmenides leading up to the first are the stages of evolution that individuals go through. So, good to be aware of, even if we don't have it nailed down yet, just to be aware that there is a map behind what we do in midwifery. So while our job is to ask the questions of the dialectic, to surface the words from the subject, and to guide their reflection, as we learn more and more about the game, learn more and more about people, we might be able to recognize, that's where you are. You're a nihilist in the ninth hypothesis. You're a materialist or reductionist in the 8th. Interesting. So we can gain an even greater level of understanding as we go through the game. And that is these are the hypotheses of Parmenides. And what's another thing that's neat about these hypotheses is it's the same logos, which is neat. So last time we were talking about the second hypothesis using the self-logos pairs, whole and part, same and different. I'm not going to give you the whole list because I don't want to ruin a question for you. That's for you to discover. But we also looked at infinite and finite, or infinite and limited, infinite and finite, and how the second hypothesis, or the ultimate experience, or the experience of pure being, is all of them is the highest expression of both together, a oneness. So for instance, people describe that experience, and by the way, it is an experience, so it's not the ultimate state, because an experience has a beginning, a middle, and end. You come out of it. So it's not the final stage of enlightenment, but it is the enlightenment experience. People describe it as, well, I saw infinity in all directions, like a sphere. But because it's infinity, there's nothing left out, because it's infinity. Nothing outside. So it's completely limited, finite. Now, what's really interesting is that can be hard to grasp in our current level of being, a current level of thinking in the physical world. In the experience, or if you can remember an experience like that, or if you've got a really great imagination, or you've been lucky enough to, oh my goodness, excuse me. If you've been lucky enough to have that experience, that might make some sense to you. But the point is, it's a way of thinking that's completely different to our everyday physical world. We can't imagine infinity and finite together. They're two different things. So, this is another feature of the hypotheses of Parmenides I wanted to talk about today. The fact that each level can't be understood. So each higher level, if this is a progression, is our growth, our spiritual growth, or our evolution as a species as well, each higher level cannot be understood by the way of thinking of the previous level. There's a certain way of thinking in the ninth hypothesis, uses the same terms, but in a completely different way as they are used in the 8th. That's called incommensurate, meaning there's a jump. Or, by the way, the mathematical expression of that is the golden ratio. If you're familiar with the golden ratio, now we have the Fibonacci sequence, which is a diminished version of the golden ratio. But the golden ratio, you know, if you're familiar with it, it's A is to B is to A plus B. I think that's it. What's interesting about the golden ratio expressed in mathematics is there's no common denominator. It can't be expressed as a fraction. It's a strange proportion of like 1.6018 or something like that. Now, that's a mathematical analogy used to understand the ordering of these hypotheses. And that sounds really complicated and stuff. It's fun, but all that's really saying is because there's no common denominator, each level is completely different. It's a completely different type of experience. So you can't use your learning here or the way of thinking here to make sense of this realm here. So when I say infinite and finite all at once together in their ultimate expression, that won't make sense of a way of thinking that we are here because we're talking about something up there. Incommensurate, different things. Now, what's interesting about that is if the levels are incommensurate, then how do you make the jump? How do we evolve? How do we change? How do we grow? This is one of the puzzles of the Hypotheses of Parmenides. Well, what we are doing here in midwifery is something really fascinating. In learning to be a midwife, we're learning to ask the questions following the dialectic that surface that help people to reflect on their problems and realize at the root cause of their problems, the cause of their problems is a fundamental false belief about themselves and reality. So what? Well, so if it's false, you don't carry it with you. You see how it fits? If it's false, you don't carry it from one level to the other. Now, debate, it doesn't do this, right? Debate is, well, I'm carrying all the dumb opinions I had coming into the debate, and I feel big and strong and tough by using language to own my opponent. And I walk out a bigger fascist than I walk in. Garbage. Debates are garbage. Because nobody changes their mind. It's not the point of debate. Debate is love of opinion, not understanding. Understanding is for everyone. Understanding is everyone wins. That's why it's the next stage of evolution. So the human problems are caused because of belief. And we're not solving problems because belief blocks us from understanding. The dialectic is understanding. Everyone wins. So what? Also, philosophical midwifery is about belief. We are learning how to use understanding as a midwife to help someone who isn't at the level of understanding, who's blocked from understanding, to reflect on the cause of them being blocked. As we've been seeing in this subject B, he's been reflecting on the scene enough to see through understanding that the beliefs that he was getting from the scene are false, but he still believes them. He can't live his life based on what he has understood to be true. He understands that he can work on small things. He understands he can seek his goals, but he believes he can't. He's not good enough. He has to be a slave. He has to give up. Midwifery is about belief. I mean, we use understanding, so it's also about understanding, but it's used as an art. It's directed to freeing people from belief. Now, if belief is false and what blocks us from our development, once we understand the root belief cause of our problems, we drop it. It's gone. Dissolves, or we let it go. We don't carry it with us. Which is why it's absurd to say, I am a Buddhist, I am a Catholic, I am a Protestant. No. Those are all beliefs. Once you've seen the nature of belief and you've understood it sufficiently, you drop it. There's a saying in Buddhism, you don't call yourself a Buddhist. Buddhism is like a raft you use to cross a river. After you've crossed the river, you don't carry it on your back. In other words, you don't say, I'm still a Buddhist. No, it's just a method. It's just a method that allows you to do something. So, that's what we're doing here. We're looking at the sorts of beliefs that we identify with as our self, because the self, the one self of the first hypothesis, is our goal. And that's beyond qualities. It's far beyond belief. Belief finishes here. Third hypothesis. The third hypothesis is understanding. So, fourth hypothesis is groupthink, belief-based thinking. That's where we are as people, and that's where we are as a species, because we're not ruled by people who have understanding and therefore can act beneficially. No, our politicians never act beneficially. Our kings never act beneficially. Our clergy never act beneficially. It's just not what happens. Why? Because benefit comes through understanding. We know this when we think of medicine. The doctor has to understand medicine to be able to benefit his patient. The mechanic has to understand how an engine works to benefit the car. If you are thinking in terms of belief, like a Republican or a Democrat or whatever, you can't benefit anyone. You can only harm them. Especially if you are saying you must have belief. For instance, in 529 AD, the academy was shut down by Emperor Justinian, who wanted to implement Christianity. So he shut down this learning. The academy, our first universities of the West, burnt down the libraries, murdered anybody trying to think for themselves, and says, hey, screw you thinking for yourself, believe me. And everything went to shit. That was we call that period of history the Dark Ages. Why? Religion means to be bound by belief. Stuck here. If you were ever learning to become a mechanic and the guy that you were learning from, you said, hey, why is it the case that? And he said, oh, don't worry about that, buddy. Just believe me, bro. You would laugh and you would not turn up the next day. You're not learning if you're not understanding. Slavery. Belief means believing someone else. Slavery. And as we've been seeing, beliefs are the cause of our problems because beliefs are not true. Nothing to do with truth. In fact, they're often in direct opposition to truth, as we've been seeing. Which is why we say the movement from why we understand why our evolution is the movement from belief-based thinking, the fourth hypothesis, to understanding-based thinking and providence or care, being able to benefit. That's the third. So we've been looking at the second hypothesis, which again won't make sense to us here in our current way of thinking, which is a shadow, it's belief, the shadow of reality. But in that experience, if you're lucky enough to have it, or if you've read about it, the same things that we use every day, like whole and part, everything we see in our world is a whole and part. It's a whole made up of parts, but you never see all of the parts with the greatest whole together in one thing. No, whole is different from parts in our world. Same terms, same self terms, same basic units of thought or cognition, just used differently in an incommensurate way. That's the golden ratio. No common denominator, incommensurate. Neat? I think it's neat. I think it's super neat. But what's fascinating is if we recognize the dialectic is also tied to these hypotheses 2 through 9, we can gain insight. This is one of the fascinating things about philosophy. analogy, jumping to another logos, using the logos of the hypotheses and jumping to another logos analogy and looking at it in terms of the dialectic. The second hypothesis. Okay, it's pure being, fair enough. It's the greatest experience, sure. But hey, use the categories of the dialectic we've been learning. There's only 4. Self. I'll use the bike example I use all the time. They use the dialectic, use understanding to explain to me what a bike is. Well, you start talking about the subject in relation to itself. Talk about the bike itself. And then to really explain it, you'd also have to talk about how that subject in relation to others, how it functions. You ride the bike. You can't ignore the fact that you use the bike to ride. You can't ignore how it functions. Hey, welcome, sus. Welcome. Always with the cute dancing little emojis. Very cute. Where's my stuffy? Reminds me to hug my stuffy. How's your world? So, the dialectic. Talk about the bike, the subject in relation to itself, but then you talk about how it functions, self to others. But then you talk about the consequence of that functioning to others. Maybe you impress your crush by doing a mean wheelie. And then as a result of all of that functioning, you synthesize it to an idea, then you relate it back. Hey, after being impressed by the wheelie, what does your crush do in relation to the bike? Maybe she gets a bike too. Or maybe you care for the bike as a result. So, the subject in relation to itself, how it functions to others, how that functioning relates to other others, and then as a result of that, how do those others relate back to the subject at the beginning? Do you care for the bike? Do you love your bike? You need to do all of those 4 categories of the dialectic to really describe a bike. Now, of course, we don't normally apply it to physical things. We usually apply the dialectic to things that exist in the second hypothesis, because this is the experience of knowing. And so our focus in philosophy is the love of wisdom. We want to have that experience. That's why the method or the skill of philosophy, what does he call it in the Phaedo? The exercise of philosophy is the dialectic. It's not about bikes, about beauty itself in the Symposium, about justice itself in the Republic, which are aspects of pure being. So we talked about the first hypothesis being ultimate reality, beyond even reality, beyond even the second. That's the one self, that's what we're after. That's the first hypothesis of Parmenides, Socrates' teacher. And then the next 8 are all other possible expressions of the first hypothesis. Other dimensions, other ways of thinking, other ways of being that humans themselves go through. But we can use analogy to jump to another logos. Hey, Mighty Street Fighter Philadelphia. I played music tonight and it went a lot better. I didn't fight anybody. Though I wasn't fighting last time, I was protecting my guitar from being broken. So instead of getting out of there. But yeah, good night tonight. Lots of happy people, lots of encouragement. It was a good one tonight. Even though my voice was a bit hoarse after last night's proceedings. Take some lessons of guitar fu. Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about using my guitar as a exactly. I was thinking about using guitar as a self-defense weapon, but like it flashed through my mind for a second when that guy decided the best course of action in his life would be to copy his thug father and try and hurt me the way he was hurt. He didn't know he was doing that. He just thought, oh, it's a good thing to do because he'd never done midwifery and questioned his idea of goodness. But when he decided that would be he didn't decide, of course. His pathologos controls him. That's why it's fate. He's a zombie, NPC. Very predictable. If you knew his parents, if you knew anything about his childhood, you'd know exactly what he would do. I didn't know the guy, so that was my problem. As he brainlessly played out his addiction, there was a thought that flashed through my mind. I could use my guitar as a self-defense weapon, but then I thought, no, it's not that well made. It wouldn't last very long. Yeah. Well, I've had some time to reflect on the key elements of that scene in relation to my own pathologos that I've been reflecting on for many years. So I've seen a lot of similarities between that way of being that I wasn't alert to soon enough and my father's way of being. Similar. So I'm able to turn that suffering, repeating cycles of the same bullshit that we live out our lives, into just pain. Because we can learn from it. That's the significance of midwifery. So yeah. And by the way, that process of self-reflection, according to the logos, that allows for learning or growth or change or providence, that's the third hypothesis of Parmenides. That's where understanding lives. That's where care lives, where benefit lives. And we can make sense of that by playing the analogy game, jumping from the hypotheses of Parmenides to another logos, the dialectic, and see, hey, if ultimate reality is the second hypothesis, and one way of understanding it is the self that exists in relation to itself, or self knowing itself completely, ousia. So if self or mind turns around and knows itself completely, you can know everything all at once. That's why it's the experience of knowledge. That's why you can know everything in all directions infinitely and have infinite bound finitely. It's infinite because that's ousia. It's a dynamic process, but it's nothing outside it, so it's also finite. So in other words, we can gain further insight into the second hypothesis by reflecting on it according to the dialectic, or another logos, another map, analogos, analogy. But what's cool about that is not only do we get an insight into the second, we can see, well, that means that, hang on a second, if the first category of the dialectic is the self in relation to the self, or the bike itself, the next part of describing a bike is how does it function, or self to others. That would mean the third hypothesis is how the second functions. Therefore, this understanding that gives benefit and providence is the functioning of pure intelligence of the second. That's understanding the functioning of pure intelligence. Or in time, it's the gap between each moment. When you go to a cinema, you have the illusion of movement, but really it's a frame, and then there's a gap, and then there's a frame, and then there's a gap. That allows for change. Out of that gap comes the next moment. Into that gap, what's no longer needed is destroyed, left behind, dissolved, and then what's best for the next moment is added. And then that's created. That's the third hypothesis. But we also recognize that these hypotheses are also ways of thinking and spiritual experiences, which means there might be a spiritual tradition that has its highest state of enlightenment, not the second, which is Taoism, but to be able to see the gap between each moment. That's the enlightenment experience of Kashmir Shivism. Kashmir Shivism. Weird one to say. To see the gap. Which would mean a good midwife or dialectician would be, hey, so you've reached the highest stage of enlightenment within Kashmir Shivism. You've seen the gap. You've seen the brilliant light between each gap, between each moment. So we would want to ask them a question that would maybe help them realize that isn't the ultimate. Don't identify yourself with it. Because the second is higher. So you might ask them a question, hey, ever thought about going into it completely? Experiencing the fullness of the light between the gaps? That might awaken them to the possibility of the second hypothesis, the Taoist enlightenment. But then we have this question that we have, well, hang on a second. Every level is incommensurate or a different way of thinking. So how can they jump? There's a completely different way of making sense. That's midwifery. Why? Because midwifery shows you that the level you're on, that you are identifying with as the highest good, as yourself, isn't real. Which means you leave it. Just as in that gap, what's not needed for the next moment is left behind. For there to be change, for there to be movement in our physical world. So too for human beings, we leave behind what isn't needed in our development. You don't carry it on your back like a raft from that Buddhist expression. After you've seen what you were alive to see about that stage, you don't say, and I'm still a Buddhist. No. You don't carry, after you've used the raft to cross the river, you don't carry it on your back. You leave it. So midwifery allows us to, what we need to make transitions in our development. So back to what we were talking about. Therefore, we can ask, if this is pure intelligence, pure ousia, the second hypothesis, the self that exists in relation to itself, notice the first hypothesis doesn't exist. It's beyond even existence, because even existence has to have a cause. That's the one self. After Parmenides says, this is my hypothesis, the one self, Aristotle says, I don't think that's likely. Well, I'm going to give you all of the other possible expressions of self. If it exists, 2, 3, 4, 5. If it doesn't, or if you deny the existence of 2, you get 7. You get 6. Which is the same dialectic, self to self, self to others, others to others, others to self. If it doesn't exist, if you deny the existence of self, giving us the 8 or the 9 with the first stages of development for human beings. So what? Well, so we can recognize that, hey, the functioning of pure intelligence is what's needed for providence. Why? Because the second has the whole and all the parts. If you wanted to care for someone, you have to be able to experience them as a whole, but also identify the parts. Like a doctor, you need to have the model of the whole of a healthy body, but be able to also understand the parts. But also relate to the whole of your patient. If your patient comes in with a sick pancreas and there's some medication that you need to give them, you also have to look at the whole of the patient and realize, well, if I give them that medication, I also have to acknowledge the whole of the person, the fact that he's an alcoholic. I can't prescribe that medicine. But also I have to have follow-up appointments. It's not just a part, it's not just a one-off doctor's appointment. Maybe in America or in capitalism where you have to pay ridiculous amounts of money to see the doctor, but normally you have follow-up appointments. You address the part and the whole of the individual and in their in time, the individual part and also the whole of their time. If I give them the medication now, next week he's going to go on a bender, drink all the alcohol. I also have to look at the whole. So, similar with our dream master. Our dream master, it can be shown if you do dream analysis that whatever is crafting your dreams knows your whole and knows all the parts, knows who you are best friends with in year 3, knows what's happening in the present. And hey, some dreams are professorial, even knows your future. So what? So to act beneficially, ideally, it's the functioning of the second hypothesis. Providence is the third hypothesis, therefore, or self to others, the functioning of the self that exists. See how we've gained insight into the hypotheses by jumping over to what we've been learning about the dialectic? Isn't that neat? Alright, so third hypothesis is understanding, or the logos and dialectic. And it's through that we get providence or care. But what's the fourth? Others to others. Groups. Group-based thinking. That's where we are. Team MAGA, Team Catholic, Team Jew, Team Left, Team Right. Ever noticed why the religious authorities of the 5,000 different religions out there at the moment never ever benefit? They're all scams by definition. Now, not your belief. Whenever I'm talking about this, I don't mean your one. I mean the 4,999 other ones. They are clearly scams. And you can look to them and say, oh my God, they're brainwashed and they think it's benefit. They think they're getting immorality, but really, they're just giving all their money away. But also we're realizing, hang on a second, of course, because it's through understanding that you gain benefit. You have to understand the toaster to fix the toaster. You need to understand the human body to benefit in medicine. So, belief, as we've been seeing, doesn't help. In fact, it harms. As we're seeing in subject B in our review. So, any system that is bound by belief, you can't do medicine based on belief, you need understanding. You can't fly a plane based on belief, you need understanding. You can't build a house, you can't be an architect based on belief, you need understanding. But you can be a king, you can be a politician with zero understanding, just on belief. I believe in guns, I believe in white supremacy, I believe in MAGA, I believe in Judaism. So that's a political thing as well as a religious thing. No understanding needed to be a preacher to start your own cult, start your own religion. Belief-based thinking. So one of our questions is, how come all of our politicians are all con artists and grifters? And how come no one is helping anyone? How come it's all stealing money to the billionaires? How come no one's addressing the genocide in Palestine? How come no one's addressing the fact that the system just siphons all of the wealth to the billionaires? And the billionaires have to do something with that money, so they buy everything. So we don't have food, we don't have homes. Because their billionaires make more money, they make $1 million interest every day. You got to spend that $1 million. So they buy everything, meaning we have no homes. We have no future. We don't get to go to lunch. Say it again. So why hasn't any king or any politician or any political ruler or any priest or any rabbi or any imam ever addressed any of these things? Why do we still live in this world? Because providence or care comes through understanding. By definition. It's not a belief that says that. That's a simple fact that we have demonstrated several different ways today. And you can see for yourself. But also, that idea or principle is represented in the hypotheses. So what? So this is where we are. Individually, we are bound by our pathologos, as we've been reviewing. No providence. In fact, our pathologos causes harm. Globally, in the world, our kings and priests have no understanding. They're bound by beliefs. So we live in a world full of harm and injustice. But it helps us to understand that the journey we are making is from others to others, or groups, to self to others, or the fourth hypothesis to the third, or from belief-based thinking. Get rid of some of these scribbles. To understanding-based thinking. That's why the name of the game is Philodianoia, the love of understanding. So, belief, others to others, groups, beliefs, and the fourth hypothesis, and we cross that line. This is our evolutionary line that we're up to right now, this line here, where we can actually learn what benefits and stop problem. Well, first of all, you use understanding to solve problems. Solve problems, fix your toaster, but also reach excellence. Or purification and perfection. Both of those things is benefit. Or from the divine providence. And how is providence distributed? How do you get the providence from your dreams? How do you get the benefit from getting punched in the head playing music? How do you get the benefit from having any sort of problem? Systematic, guided self-reflection, or the logos and dialectic. How do you get this? You get it from the logos, putting words on your experience, the right words, not racist words, but the self-logos words. And the dialectic is the structure. So what's logos and dialectic? Understanding. Or dianoia. So we've gained an insight into the third and fourth hypothesis, where we are in the fourth as individuals with a pathologos from group, from our family clan, going all the way back to being cavemen, and what we need for our evolution to solve problems, end genocides, end starvation, end torture of children, but also reach excellence. How do we harmonize with our world? How do we make everything equal? How do we have fun? Globally, as a species and individually. The movement from the fourth to the third. And we gain that insight by applying another logos, by realizing it's the dialectic. It's self to others. It's the functioning of pure intelligence, which is the self itself that exists, not the one self that's beyond existence. Hang on a second. Understanding, belief. We have just unlocked a puzzle. Yay. Hey, notice 2, 3, 4, 5 hypothesis. Self to self, self to others, others. Hang on a second. We've got two terms. We've recognized others to others is belief-based, fourth hypothesis. Self to others is understanding, through which we get care and providence. Lacking in a world where you don't have a midwife, or you're not subscribed to this channel. Lacking in a world where your relationship is not bound by a love through understanding. So it's a pathologos, sick love. Or in a world where our kings and priests have not mastered dianoia. No providence, suffering, barbarism. That's our world, individually and... Hang on a second. Understanding and belief. Remember a couple of episodes ago we went into Book 6 of the Republic and we looked at the divided line, the stages of cognition that human beings have given in this picture of the divided line? What were the 4 categories? Hang on a second. The second was belief and the third was dianoia, understanding. Those were the 2 that we recognized. Those were the 2 conclusions from using another logos, using the dialectic structure to gain insight into the hypotheses. So what? Well, if we've got 2 and we have another logos in our back pocket, if we have the divided line, that's another logos that we got not from our own dumb opinions, but from the book, from Socrates, someone who's gone through this. He had a teacher, Parmenides, and Diotima, who was a lady. A master of the logos, presenting a yoga through different categories of beauty. We're going to get into the symposium soon. Been talking about it a lot. I think we should do it next. By the way, are women valued equally in society? As they should be, because Socrates' spiritual and philosophical teacher was a woman. Oh, they're not? Women are treated as second-class citizens, or worse? For how long? Oh, really? Does it go all the way back to the church's idea that Eve lied to Adam and that caused sin? By the way, if you read the Garden of Eden story, it's not in there. In other words, the Catholic Church has been lying to people for hundreds of years about the Adam and Eve story. Eve didn't lie. That's not what we're told at church. And you'll find a similar kind of lie done by priests of all religions to victimize women, giving them a black eye over history for hundreds and hundreds of years. Or the opposition to what's belief? Belief is in opposition to providence. Yeah, no shit, it's the church who have been abusing women for so long, lying to everyone. Hey, why have the religious authorities who know the Adam and Eve story isn't about that, doesn't have Eve lying? Eve doesn't even leave the garden. So why have they been telling us for 1,000 years and more that women are the cause of suffering, women are the cause of sin? That's why they have pain in childbirth. They've been lying. Is that worth addressing? That people claiming to speak for God have been knowingly lying to people, causing a disgusting and terrible prejudice against women for over 1,000 years? It would only be worth addressing if we care about justice. Not so we treat them the way they treat women and burn them at the stake, treat them like property. We're not going to take all of these lying, abusive religious figures and burn them at the stake. Now, that's their game. Our game is, let's reflect on the causes and conditions. It's a weird chatter in chat. Let's time that guy out. Oh no. Time out for weird stuff in the chat. First weird comment I've had. I've been streaming for like a year and a half. So, how do we address injustice? With justice. How do we address the problems caused by false beliefs? With understanding. Midwifery. Why? Why have you been lying to everyone about women being the cause of sin? Why have you been oppressing women for 1,500 years? What false beliefs are you carrying? Why did it seem believable? If understanding helps everyone, creates a world where everyone is happier, a world of maturity, rationality, maturity, to that. And what are the conditions within society that allow people with such disgusting, oppressive beliefs to rise to positions of authority? In other words, why do we care about belief when understanding is what we care about in everything else? Why, when it comes to kings and priests, do we give a shit about belief? So that we can have a mature society. I believe all women are less than men. Make me president. That never happens in medicine, in aviation. Right, so that's how we would solve problems. But, so we've got a recognition that understanding and belief. Did I time that guy out? Is he asking the same question? I timed him out, but I can still see his weird thing. Alright, ignore it. Ah, fuck it, block him. How come it's still there? Do I delete? Gone. Gone. So, another logos. We've got belief and understanding, problems in human society and the problems within individuals are caused by beliefs. That's what we've been reviewing in subject A and subject B. Solutions come through understanding and the art of philodianoia. But if we have this analogos, this other logos, this divided line here, how dark am I? We can fill out the rest. Belief and understanding, which means on the other side there's nous or knowledge, and the other side of belief is image thinking. Neat. This is how we've been learning to read. As soon as you start to notice the beginnings of a pattern, fill out the rest, create a hypothesis, and see if you can use that hypothesis to gain new insight. Like in a video game. You notice that, hey, these first 2 paintings on the wall, as I go through the hallway of Resident Evil, have gems in the eyes of the faces. Then maybe the painting on this side, which doesn't have gems, and the painting on this side doesn't have gems, maybe I'm supposed to go through the mansion that has a resident in the mansion, and that resident is evil. It's an evil resident. The zombies are evil. I liked Resident Evil 1 because it wasn't zombies at the start. It was just, there's an evil. What is it? Then it just became about the T-virus. I liked the mystery. Resident Evil. Anyway, you've noticed a pattern, then fill it out. Solve the puzzle and see if putting gems in here and here and in this guy's face too, if it opens the doorway to another area. Or the archetype or the paradigm, the ideal that's all based on is philosophy. So let's see if we fill out the other sides, because we've noticed a pattern opens a doorway to not a new section of the mansion, but new insight into the nature of self and reality. That's what the game we're here to play is as human beings. Let's do it. So we'll take our divided line from 2 episodes ago and fill it out. We've got the second, third, fourth, fifth hypothesis. We've got the 4 categories of the dialectic. We've got spam. Every friggin' stream we have a couple of spam. Spam, delete. And block. So we've got the categories of the dialectic, we've got the hypotheses of Parmenides, but also we've got understanding belief. What was before belief? Image thinking. Let's add that gem to the painting face. Thinking. And let's write it more handsomely on the board. Image thinking. And what's above understanding? You guessed it. Knowledge.
Talking about a bunch of slop.
You're drunk.
I'm cute. Like, it's cutie pie.
Okay. Knowledge. Or nous. Capital N knowledge. So, we've filled out the puzzle pieces. Can we use it to gain insight? Does that mean that the object of knowledge, the goal of learning or education, is the apprehension of pure ousia, the second hypothesis? Is that the knowable experience? So anyone says, I know about this or that in the physical world, we can laugh at them, and we can point at them, and we can yell at them.
I can't walk and chew gum at the same time.
You can't walk and chew gum at the same time. You're an idiot.
I've been a bad little girl.
And you've been a bad little girl, says Emma's dad, sound like. Why? Because knowledge, according to our hypothesis here, is about the realm of being, or ousia. And where does understanding come from? The third hypothesis. Understanding-based thinking comes from the second in the gap between each moment. Interesting. Where do you get beliefs? From group-based thinking, others to others, or the fourth hypothesis. Is that the nature of belief? Believing someone else based on what group you grew up in? Religious group, cultural group, and most importantly, family group? Oh my god. Holy shit. We're unlocking the mysteries. Hooray. In fact.
Wow.
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 Wow. Interesting. What about image thinking? What people normally consider to be thinking, but what we have been realizing is just a byproduct of our pathologos belief, causing people to be trapped in our ignorance, trapped in our zombie virus. And as we looked at in the interview John Stewart had this week, him and Peter were really troubled by the fact that people within his Jewish culture, his Jewish groups, his Jewish family groups and religious groups were getting very angry at John for saying, hey, just understand that murdering children doesn't help us as Jews. He was very angry and upset and confused as to why that simple act of understanding would cause so much violence and viciousness from his friends and family. Well, if understanding is providential, again, solves problems, so good on John for wanting to use understanding to address the situation in Palestine. But we're seeing it's the functioning of nous, but image thinking is disconnected. You get pissed off when somebody says, let's understand the cause of the problems in Palestine. Let's understand the cause of the problems of capitalism. Let's understand the cause of the problems of crime. No, the baby brain fucktards, that's a bit harsh. The baby brained people, the people who get most viciously, that's anti-America. You either support the Iraq war or you get out of America. You either love Trump or we'll send you to concentration camps. You either love Netanyahu or we'll bomb your children. The worst kind of thinking and feeling and functioning that that any species, not just human beings, any species, that's the fucking worst. Human beings can be literally the worst kinds of animals. Other animals don't do this. Other animals don't have genocides and holocausts. Other animals don't meet someone saying, we can make a better world by using understanding to solve problems. The wolf pack doesn't just murder them. The wolf pack would help, would love that. Hey, you can understand. You should lead us then. Show us where your understanding leads us to better food. But if we have recognized from the divided line, let's go back. So we used this model, thumbs up, to recognize that understanding is caused or a shadow of nous, so too, image thinking is, number one, is caused by belief. See how one is a smaller section of the divided line than number two? Number two, beliefs cause our image thinking, and image thinking only serves to justify the same beliefs you started with. Like a debate. All of your thinking in your debate is just being used to justify the belief you came in with. Ever seen a debate on YouTube? Has it pissed you off? Because it's the same racists or fascists using their thinking to just come back to the same bullshit they started with? And it's even more frustrating when you realize this racist is just racist because his family's racist. So he hasn't even lived a fucking life. He's just vomiting out words that support the same racist bullshit his dad fed him when he was 1 and 2. So no one's solving any problems in our
No
world.
one seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
Even so-called philosophers aren't fixing anything. Now we know why. The divided line shows us why. The divided line has the model of different cognitive functions humans participate in, potentially, because you can be stuck. You can be stuck on this side of the line. Whoops. And what we got from that is beliefs generate our what we consider to be thinking, but it's not real thinking. It's not real dialectic. It's not real generation of hypothesis. It's image thinking. Shapes and colors. People motivated by shapes and colors. Racists and sexists and bigots and all sorts. And so beliefs generate image thinking, and image thinking just leads you back. It's a stagnant circle, which is itself a reflection of the other side of the divided line. Now, reflection's a key word. When you look in a mirror, you see a reflection of yourself, but it's not, you lose all the best qualities, right? Your 2D reflection of your 3D self doesn't have intelligence, doesn't have will, and right is distorted, so left is right, right is left. So too, this is a reflection, diminished, distorted, missing all the great qualities of the higher side of the divided line. Because we're looking at this, nous generates understanding. The dialectic and logos we use in the love of understanding exists as aspects of nous. It's the intelligibility of pure being. And we use dianoia to return to nous, just like on the other side. But what's missing on this side of the line is, hey, yes, you use the dialectic, and that's philosophy, using understanding, using the dialectic applied to being to generate the conditions for the spiritual experience, you remembering yourself as the eternal, mind knowing itself. But if that's an experience, it has an end. As you come out, you can use understanding to reflect on that to maintain it. Use it as a model for beautiful and just actions in the world. You can also reflect on the cause of it to go beyond it. It's not stagnant. You can use understanding to understand the causes even of nous. And you can also use understanding in midwifery to turn back and help people who are stuck here. So all of those higher functions are missing in this. But people think that's thinking. That's why human beings are stuck. We haven't realized what we consider to be thinking ain't thinking at all. It's just our stupid beliefs in a shallow kiddie pool full of kids' piss. Yucky, yucky kid piss pool. Just confirming the same bullshit beliefs we had to begin with. No one's learning, no one's changing. That's what we consider to be thinking normally until we love understanding and realize that understanding's different. But how is it different? Well, going back to this puzzle that we've been playing with today, understanding doesn't come from us. Why? Because what we think we are is going to be one level or a certain level of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hypotheses of Parmenides. Now, it's not going to be the first, of course, that stands atop. That's where we're heading, that's our goal. So, these are different ways of thinking and different spiritual experiences because there are different ways of identifying the self, different reflections of the one self. That's where your belief is. So what? Here's getting hot. Under my tuk-tuk. That's Canadian for beanie. We'll fold it up like that. Better. So what? If your beliefs cause your thinking, then you can't get understanding from yourself. Because yourself is going to be one of these. And where does understanding come from? Well, that was our new insight today. Understanding comes from the functioning of pure nous. In the gap. So the source of true thinking comes from not something we do, but it comes from an openness and a receptivity of the brilliant light that happens between each moment, allowing that logos to function, to guide our thinking. It has its own life, self-logos. It has its own demands. We're following the logos. Therefore, true understanding we can recognize as the dialectic, using the logos, using analogy the way we're doing to gain insights, but recognizing that all of this guidance comes from the gap. Most efficiently for us, stream analysis, but so it's not a doing, it's not an effort. It's an openness and curiosity and receptivity to the functioning of pure intelligence. So we can ask the next question. Hey, wouldn't you want to be functioning intelligently all the time? Or do you want to have some terrible ignorance that causes problems and suffering? Well, no, I want it all the time, right? Don't you want to be benefiting all the time? Be a good person all the time? Sure. Have we come across anything recently that talks about a single way of functioning that you can do at all times? That's your intended purpose or your higher way of functioning? What's the highest way of functioning on this map? Justice. Remember we read it in book 4, 2 episodes ago, or 1 episode ago? Juriki in the Greek. That state of being where you're in that flow state or effortless. The effortless functioning where does justice live? Second. The effortless functioning of that would be here. The functioning of that. Which is in the gap, that's the third. How do we recognize it? Actual thinking, actual understanding. So what we are discovering in this game that we are playing today is that true, what we consider to be thinking isn't thinking. That's why people are stuck in their problems. And why we do midwifery to free ourselves from our beliefs. That's not you. You are not what you believe to be. Instead, you don't end up with a new image of self. You let go of your image of self. Image thinking. You let go of your image. That's down here. Why? Because you let go of your belief. Because they're not true. Beliefs are not true. They cause problems. They're not true. So what? So you're left with an emptiness of self, meaning you're allowing for the ousia of self to function itself through the gaps. Guiding your thinking, that's understanding. That's how to be a good guide. That's how to be a beneficial person. And it's that openness and receptivity to effortless excellence that was defined as justice in Book 4. And that's what we tap into in philosophical midwifery. And we do it all the time. We don't want some shit. We don't want to spend our life solidifying that pee pool, identifying with crappy beliefs that are cause of problems. What does that mean? That means if understanding or true thinking is something that happens that we can be receptive to and not doing because it's in the gap, it's the self to other functioning of intelligence itself, that means that what we are learning about our ideal functioning is that we have to let go of what's false. Meaning we're not carrying our image thinking. Like, hey, if I get more enlightened, I'm going to be a better Nazi. Doesn't work that way. Because your Nazi thinking isn't the same as the higher level. Oh, I'm going to be the best Jew, or the best Catholic, or the best racist, or the best whatever. No, that's all belief-based thinking from groups, from other people. You can't have that and carry it with you to the next level of evolution, to understanding where you can solve problems and reach excellence and benefit, be a good leader to yourself and to others. You can't carry it with you. Why? Because each level is incommensurate. Different way of thinking, different way of making sense. Completely. This one is based on belief, and this one is something that's happening. That's the golden ratio, by the way. The analogy, the mathematical representation of the unfolding of these incommensurate levels. Like when you look into the mirror, it's a 2D reflection, but it can't have goals like you have. Your image in the mirror can't do math like you can. It can't have hopes and dreams like you can. It's a completely different level, completely different way of functioning, a way of being. So what? So if there was an art for how to identify what we are to help identify what we identify with that's false, not so we collect more things, but so we free ourselves or let go of something, then that specific art would be the art needed to move to an incommensurate level of evolution, meaning it's the process of evolution. Have you heard of such an art? That's what we're doing in philosophical midwifery. A process of identifying the problems caused by our image thinking, to identify the false belief behind it so we can realize it's false and limited, let go of it, opening us up to true participation in the curiosity and wonder of the Logos itself, functioning effortlessly at all times in that flow state, which can be applied to being itself in philosophy. As we mentioned earlier, someone in the third, you might ask them questions about the second. That's philosophy. We use the dialectic in Socrates' dialogues to understand beauty itself, justice itself. They're all aspects of the second. But also in philosophy, we use understanding to reflect even on that experience to go beyond it to the first. Each level we are seeing that there is a necessity for it to be reflected, a kind of necessity for us to go through these stages, if there is such a thing as this self, then it would reflect as we would have a reflection in the mirror. But we're also seeing it's not real. It's just a reflection. It's fake, it's stagnant. It's people. And if we really see that sufficiently in midwifery, we are able to jump. So, you want to make change? This is the game, philosophical midwifery. You want to discover what's true? That's here, and here. How do you get there? Here. You want to be a good person? Providence, benefit, that comes through dianoia. How do you get that? Midwifery. Why? Because we start here, we have to make this jump. How do you make the jump? You don't carry your beliefs with you, you jettison them through midwifery, awakening you to true understanding. And all of that insight came itself, effortlessly. I didn't plan any of this, but I did carry with me a recognition of analogy. We get these systems here and here and here, and we can jump from one to the other to gain insights. Another logos, analogy. So long as you want to play the game, or rather you are a kind of person who is seeking truth and care. One of the criticisms against debate is, well, if you're not genuinely empathetic, genuinely desiring to benefit, why would you want to get rid of your Nazi beliefs? Why would you want to move to understanding? Why would you want to change? And ultimate change happens through this kind of a jump, or a jettisoning, through recognition that these kind of exist necessarily as reflections, but they're not you. So if you are that kind of person with a good heart, interested in care, and good heart and good head is the expression. Good heart, you actually want to benefit people, unlike the current kings and priests. Belief-based. And you also have a good head. You're interested in understanding. You're not interested in being a slave to the beliefs of some stupid books no one reads and misreads and has been lied about. For example, the Adam and Eve story. No one reads the original text. Nothing about Eve lying. Nothing about women having to be punished and treated as second-class citizens for 1,500 fucking years. No, beliefs are lies, necessarily. So, you can recognize that if you have a good head and you want to think for yourself, not this thinking. But we can see more about why this isn't real thinking, because we can jump analogously. We've jumped from the fifth to here, but we can jump into that middle thing. Others to self. What's understanding? The functioning self to others of that self here. So the dialectic, you start with a subject and you define it in relation to itself. And this defined subject then comes to the next level and functions. So if understanding is the functioning of this, what's this the functioning of? This. Image thinking. So if understanding is the functioning of mind itself, image thinking is the kind of functioning, the kind of how you relate to yourself based on others or beliefs. So this highlights the symmetry. We can see more of the symmetry of the hypotheses. The third hypothesis is the functioning of the second, just as the fifth hypothesis is the functioning of the fourth, or image thinking is the functioning of beliefs. So image thinking is the functioning of beliefs, but also we can jump another step, go back to the hypotheses. What's the name of the fifth hypothesis? Dualism. It's the Ghostbusters symbol, no ghost. A strict dualism. So you can say people in the second hypothesis are able to experience pure intelligence. People in the third can function with that through understanding or experience it in the gap if it's an experience, or as a way of functioning, it's through dianoia, understanding. People in the fourth are in groups, either pathologos groups or religious groups or MAGA groups. Belief-based thinking, which is the cause of problems and disconnects us, blocks us from understanding, prevents us from actually being good. So harm is caused in the fourth. That's where we are individually, is with pathologos, and culturally, and we still have kings and priests. It is absurd. So belief groups is the fourth hypothesis, is groups. What's the fifth? Strict dualism, which says, hey, delete that thing there. It's not deleting. Why can't I delete that? Anyway, what's the fifth? Strict dualism. Or rather, people in the fourth say, hey, we can't experience the divine in the gap, or we can't connect with it through understanding and dream analysis and philosophy. We can't directly experience it in the second. That would be heresy. Maybe when you die, you can go to heaven, but we can't have that experience. If we could have it for ourselves, why would we believe the guy in the big hat and give him all our money and give him all our children to do whatever they do with children? Doesn't have to be said. It's quite well known. Trump, king. Catholic Church, priests. Quite well known. They take all the money and they rape all the children. Harm. Why? Because we need money to live and we need to care for our children as they grow. So this is the way of thinking that causes harm. So that's quite, it's in the news right now, so it's worth pointing at. Let's move on from that, because let's not get bogged down in their problems. So what's the fifth hypothesis? Strict dualism, which means there is no connection. Just as the fourth hypothesis says we can't be God, but we can be like him when we sing Kumbaya in a group, a reflection of it. The fifth says we don't even have that. The fifth still thinks that there is such a thing as a divine, but there's no connection to us. There is a God, but we would be like ants to him. Why would he care about us? I prayed every day for a new bike and God didn't give me one. Of course he didn't, because there's no connection between us and the divine. He's got bigger things on his mind. No connection. Doesn't care about us even. That's the fifth hypothesis, strict dualism. So, we can gain an insight as to why what we consider regular everyday thinking we do with our effort as we debate our bros and debate bros. We can see why it's not understanding and why it can't ever be good, because we understood providence, of course, is connected to understanding, but understanding is the functioning of the second. It's the functioning of intelligence itself, self that exists. And if the fifth is a disconnection, a strict dualism, it means there is no connection. So there can't be providence, there can't be understanding. So what we consider regular everyday thinking or image thinking can't be understanding and can't be beneficial, because double jump over to 5, because it's a strict dualism. That's the nature of the fifth hypothesis. Disconnected from the source of intelligence itself, from the source of understanding itself, from the source of care itself. You can't find understanding with debate bros. You can't find understanding with philosophy teachers at college. You can't find understanding with regular everyday thinkers, any thinkers at college. It's not understanding. It's not dianoia, true understanding. It's not the understanding that is actually benefiting people. Hey, you can use scientific understanding to build nuclear weapons. Does that benefit people? You can use your everyday thinking like Ben Shapiro and justify genocide against the Palestinians. Does that help people? I said, does it? But now we're understanding why. We are understanding why necessarily that's the case. Because image thinking is others to self, or the fifth hypothesis, which is a strict disconnection from intelligence itself, while understanding is the functioning of intelligence itself, the whole and the parts, providentially. That's where care comes from. That's where understanding comes from. And it's not something we do. It's an effortless functioning of excellence or justice as defined in the fourth hypothesis, in the fourth book of the Republic. So anyone who isn't going through philosophical midwifery, reflecting on the fundamental cause of their style of thinking, their false beliefs that they haven't examined through philosophical midwifery, isn't doing dianoia. Isn't doing really understanding, true understanding. The sort of understanding that can be applied, as we saw in the divided line, the sort of understanding that could be applied to nous, to have the experience of reality itself, can be applied to that experience to understand it, nail it down, can be applied to it to go beyond it, to realize your highest purpose, know the self, and can be applied back to help people through the process of removing their chains to their image thinking caused by their bondage to belief. That's true understanding. That's the game. That's what we're here for. That's what we do through philosophical midwifery. Now, there are people with a good head and a good heart out there who are very close, who are themselves using their image thinking and belief to wonder about the causes of problems in the world and realizing, holy crap, the people who are justifying genocide seem to have this Jewish belief, or this Zionist belief, or this capitalist belief, or this Christian belief, or this whites get to colonize the blacks belief. So those are the good people out there, people who are genuinely interested with a good head in understanding and with a good heart in trying to care. They're realizing that, oh, hang on a second, at the root of it is our first teachers. We can't have equality and religion if religion says some people are not equal, because they're opposites, they contradict. You can't have a chosen people and equality. You can't have billionaires and wealth equality. You can't have capitalism and equality. You can have understanding and equality. You can have knowledge and equality. You can have the self and equality. So, we reach out to people with good hearts and good heads and say, you are at this line here. You're at the line of evolution. You're the best of us human beings. Best heart, best head. You've made the most of your beliefs and image thinking. You're at the verge of evolution. You're at this line. And we want you to evolve. We need people to evolve, to guide us, to rule us. Why? Because ruling through dianoia is what bestows benefit. We don't want kings and priests anymore. We want good, providential philosopher kings and philosopher queens. We need it. If we don't, our species is done. If we get it, we can solve problems. No more genocide. No more starvation. We want the best of us to recognize this is what we're here for, to cross this line. and the potential, the joy that comes with crossing this line in being able to do this and this and this, and also help those 4 kinds of uses of dianoia. The kind of new relationships you can have by having a love bound in understanding, one that actually benefits. The freedom of being free from your problems, your suffering, your effort, and relationships that aren't bound in understanding. The sick kind of love we've just got from subject B. Without sharing an understanding, that was the only way. If he could have shared as equals through understanding and truth-seeking and being honest, we would have had a new, more mature way of relating. That's the only way it would have been worthwhile, says subject B, reflecting on his origin scene with his father. Otherwise, the whole thing here, this is going to be love. And who the hell wants that kind of love? Love based on belief and image thinking, sickness, sadism. That's the line. That's where we're at. And how do we cross the line? If they are incommensurate, not by collecting things here and taking it with you. I mean, in a sense, we can learn through analogy to gain a sense of it, to gain the map of it. But how do we actually make the journey if it's incommensurate? If this is effortless, a letting go of what we are carrying that's causing our thinking that we don't even know we're carrying. That's the pathologos. That's the 4th hypothesis. That's the belief and the activity that allows for that kind of most mature, honest, important self-reflection to identify that unsuspected false belief and let go of it so you can make that evolutionary jump, which we all want you to make because we need you. That's philosophical midwifery. That's what we're learning here. And that's what subject B is going through in the book here. And that's what you're going to be going through, I hope. And we're all going to be going through. And we can learn to be like Pierre in this example, guiding, asking the questions to guide through that process. So that's what we'll jump into next time. We'll finish off this talk with all of that wonderful new insight. We've opened a few doors of the Resident Evil mansion. We put a few gems in the thing, done the thing, and freeing ourselves from the zombie virus, the T virus. Literally, that's the zombie virus, is the pathologos. Keeps us stuck. Keeps us stuck in a low level of intelligence and functioning, like a zombie virus. So we'll jump back in to the book and finish case subject B next time. I hope you had a lot of fun. Now, that a lot of what I said probably won't make a lot of sense. That's okay. Be puzzled by it and carry the puzzle for a long time until it pops off. Thank you once again for joining me. Thank you for Stuffy, for keeping me company. Thank you for the chatters for stopping in and saying hi. And I will see you in the next one. Music. There we go.